Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining. In this video, after a very convincing poll result I posted a few days ago, we're taking a quick look at Ascendancy DPS, and I was pleasantly surprised. It did much better than I was expecting. Setting a few expectations now, this is a very short, straight to the point video, so let's just get into it. Now, as always, we have the same test conditions, that being a single loader mod, nothing to boost reserves, and a major spec mod, since this is a legendary and testing was against Carl. Once damage is covered, there'll be two lots of timings, the first with just one rocket in the opening chamber, while the second test will start with two in the opening chamber, due to Ambitious Assassin. Despite that, all numbers are based off of impact casing, impulse amplifier, and explosive light, but I'll explain that a little more when looking at the timings. So, damage numbers. This rocket launcher comes with explosive light and chain reaction in the final perk column, but of course for this video, and it being about DPS, we'll only be looking at the former of those two. For those who don't know, explosive light is acquired upon picking up an orb of light or power. This will provide a damage buff with one stack depleting for every round fired. It stacks up to a maximum of 6, meaning for Ascendancy, that's 6 rockets with increased damage, of which without explosive lights, that damage came in at 78,787, which consisted of 2 lots of damage, 18,824 for impact and 59,963 for blast. However, with the explosive light damage buff, that increased to 23,387 for impact and 74,954 for blast, for a total damage per rocket of 98,341. This is an increase to impact of 24.24% and 25% for blast, making the total increase 24.82%. I could hold 7 rockets in total, but as I've already said, explosive light will only stack to a maximum of 6. Therefore, while the first 6 rockets were with the almost 25% buff, the final rocket was at base damage. This brought total damage to 668,833. Now, it probably isn't that difficult to set up more rockets with that buff, whereby you could walk over an orb of light midway through firing, especially if a well or bubble has just been placed, but I'm keeping this test close to base numbers. So as I've already stated, there'll be 2 lots of timings but with the same damage, and I'll show these side by side in the showdown format that I've been doing a lot of recently. This really does help to demonstrate how 2 different weapons compare at different points in time, and when that's coupled with the graph, they're both very useful pieces of information. For this example, it's just to show the effect of 2 rockets in the opening chamber compared to 1. Now, what we have here is Ascendancy with 1 rocket in the opening chamber on the left, and on the right it's 2 rockets in the opening chamber. For the latter, it's assumed the player has had Ambitious Assassin selected and used that to get 2 in the mag, switched back to Impulse Amplifier, and then picked up a heavy brick or bricks to replenish reserves. It may sound awkward, but in any ad segment before a boss damage phase, I'd say this is actually easily achievable. Now, you may notice that with 2 in the opening chamber, it isn't actually ahead that often. Damage is probably the same more of the time. I'd say something like this provides more of an advantage for burst DPS, long-term sustained DPS, especially if you use reserve mods. I don't think it's that important to get 2 in that opening magazine, or chamber. So it's taken 14.3 seconds to fire 7 rockets with just 1 in the opening chamber, which brought DPS to 46,772. And just 13.3 seconds to fire 7 rockets with 2 in the opening chamber, which brought DPS for that method to 50,288, and I think that's actually really impressive. Coming on screen now is a table with a few other rocket launchers that I've tested last season. I've done a quick check on some of the damage numbers to make sure they're still relevant, and nothing has sneaked in with any old seasonal mods. Pause the video if you want a little more time to look at this, as we are moving on to the graph. So I'm going to bring both of these on at the same time, and it's on the graph where we can also see just how close these 2 examples are. Damage is equal more often than it's not. As I've said, 2 rockets in the opening mag is very good for burst DPS, but over longer periods of time, I wouldn't worry if you're unable to set this up. Regardless, 46 to 50,000 DPS is much more than I was expecting. Explosive light providing a very nice buff to damage here, but without actually being that difficult to stack. Now to compare to some competition, starting with tomorrow's answer. This has the perks Impact Casing, Field Prep and Clown Cartridge, so 2 rockets in every chamber. Deathbringer with its Catalyst, and Deathbringer again but with the majority of the opening delay removed. I'll touch on this a little more soon. Code Duello with Impact Casing, Impulse Amplifier and Frenzy. Frenzy has been nerfed since I last tested this on its own, but that has been accounted for in this video. Royal Entry with Impact Casing and Clown Cartridge, and finally Code Duello with Impact Casing, auto-loading holster and frenzy paired with Izanagi's burden. And if there's anything that stands out to me here, it's how well Ascendancy performs. If you start with 2 rockets in the opening chamber, it can actually kind of hold on to Code Duello and Izanagi's burden until around 6 to 7 seconds. It's always ahead of Deathbringer with the delay and does a good job of sticking with it without the delay. And what I mean when I say delay is one Deathbringer has the time included from the moment of firing to the first projectile damaging the target, while in the other example I've removed the majority of that delay. So this is if you can fire from Deathbringer before a damage phase starts, but so that the orbs impact once that damage phase has started. Code Duello with Lasting Impression hasn't been included because while it might be good for total damage, it's not so much for DPS. There are other rocket launchers that I've tested, but I've excluded any that just weren't that good and any that had Vorpal weapon, since it is getting nerfed soon. Links to all rocket launcher videos have been included in the description down below though. So, Ascendancy coming in with what I think are some very impressive numbers. Explosive Light may not be an always active passive perk, but in Destiny 2's current sandbox, it's not exactly hard to stack it to 6. And if you can set yourself up with 2 in the opening chamber, it has the best single weapon burst DPS in this test. A weapon that I've never even fired until testing for this video, and something I'm absolutely going to use more of. Especially when you take into consideration ambitious assassin and chain reaction, which must make this one of the best ad clearing rocket launchers in the game. Some may be wondering where Hothead is, but unfortunately I don't have one with any good DPS perks. Damage per rocket appears to be pretty much identical to Ascendancy with impact casing and explosive light. So in the third perk column, you want something to reduce downtime, which basically means increased reload speed, so it can compete with Ascendancy and Impulse Amplifier. And the 2 perks that stand out for me are Field Prep and Demolitionist. Personally, I'd take Field Prep for the extra reserves, and it will improve reload speed all the time as long as you crouch. Whereas Demolitionist is only good for 1 instance, 2 if you have double grenades, but remember Demolitionist now has a short cooldown, so you'd need to reload and fire before proccing it again. I don't think it could ever quite match Ascendancy, not with 2 in the opening chamber anyway, but Hothead should never be too far behind with the right perks. Overall, I'm very impressed and I will be using Ascendancy much more often. And on that note, it is all from me. A very short video, but I still hope it was helpful and interesting. Now it's time for me to start prep work for the 7th of December and also get some damage scaling against raid bosses completed. If that goes well, hopefully I'll be including it in the next video, but no promises just yet. If you did enjoy this video and found it helpful or interesting, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already, and give me any feedback in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.